There is a weight that you might be carrying right now, and it is honestly one of the heaviest, most suffocating burdens that a human heart can endure.
It really is.
Yeah, it's this exhausting, just relentless burden of carrying an offense. Because, I mean, if we are completely honest with ourselves, it is so incredibly natural to keep a mental ledger.
Oh, absolutely. We all have one.
Right. We all do. It's that invisible accounting book where we just, record who has hurt us, who owes us an apology, who has spoken ill of us.
Who crossed the line just one too many times.
Exactly. And we hold on to these records almost like a shield, like we think they protect us somehow.
Yeah, like it keeps us safe.
Right. And you find yourself flipping through the pages of that ledger at like 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, rehearsing exactly what you should have said,
Oh, the midnight rehearsal. We've all been there.
calculating the exact amount of emotional debt they owe you. But the truth is, keeping score like that, it just completely drains your spiritual energy.
It does. It really does.
It creates this quiet, solitary prison that we build for ourselves, literally, brick by brick, with every rehearsed grievance. We think we are locking the other person out, but we are actually just locking ourselves in.
It truly is a prison. And I want to say directly to you listening right now, it is a deeply human place to find yourself.
Yeah, it's so common.
When you have been wounded, when someone has taken something from you, whether that is, your peace, your reputation, your trust, the instinct to demand repayment is incredibly powerful.
It's survival, almost.
Exactly. You want the scales to be balanced. You want them to feel the weight of what they've done. And look, that sense of justice isn't inherently evil.
Right, because God is a God of justice.
He is. But the tragedy of the human ledger is that it never actually heals the wound. It just keeps the wound open, it keeps it exposed, and intensely sensitive to the touch.
Yeah, you just keep aggravating it.
You do. You end up entirely consumed by the debt someone else owes you. And in the process, you lose your own freedom. You become spiritually and emotionally bound to the very person who hurt you.
Wow. Yeah, your joy literally becomes dependent on their remorse.
And if they never show remorse, which happens a lot, you are trapped.
Which is exactly why we are having this conversation today. We're looking directly at the teachings of Jesus regarding this profound and, frankly, very jarring call to forgive.
It is jarring. It goes against our nature.
Completely. Specifically, we're going to look really closely at the parable of the unforgiving debtor. This is found in Matthew chapter 18. And the goal here, it's not just to learn a polite moral lesson about being the bigger person.
No, that's not what Jesus is doing.
Right. It's about experiencing a genuine, radical heart transformation. We are looking together at the sheer, staggering magnitude of Christ's redemptive grace.
With the hope that you might be able to trade that heavy book of grudges for the absolute freedom of God's limitless mercy.
Yes. But, conceptually, infinite forgiveness sounds beautiful, like on a greeting card. But in practice, how do you actually convince a human brain to stop counting?
It's so hard. And Jesus knew his listeners wouldn't get it if he just spoke abstractly.
Right.
So he anchors it in an economic reality that everyone understands, which is crushing unpayable debt.
Let's set the stage for that. Because Jesus doesn't just start telling this story out of nowhere, right?
No, he doesn't. To understand the depths of this parable, we really have to look at the context. The very relatable, almost defensive human question that prompts it.
From Peter.
From Peter, exactly. One of his closest followers. Peter comes to Jesus with a very practical, almost administrative question about the limits of grace.
He wants a rule book.
He does. He asks, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times.
You can almost picture Peter puffing out his chest here. Like he's standing there waiting for Jesus to hand him the valedictorian of grace award.
Oh, absolutely. He thinks he's being incredibly generous.
Because if we look at the historical context of, first century rabbinic teaching, the common cultural rule was that you should forgive someone 3 times.
Right. 3 strikes and you're out.
Exactly. It was based on a literal reading of the book of Amos. God says, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not revoke the punishment.
So the rabbis interpreted that to mean God forgives 3 times, but on the 4th strike, judgment falls.
Yeah. And they reasoned, if that's God's limit, well, that should be our limit too. So Peter takes the cultural standard of 3, doubles it to 6 to be, extra holy, and then adds 1 more for good measure to hit 7. the biblical number of completion.
He is essentially saying, Lord, look at how expansive my grace is. I'll go all the way to 7.
I'll let them walk all over me 7 times. Which, honestly, 7 times for the same offense is a lot.
It is a lot. He absolutely thought he was grasping the heart of Jesus' teaching on love. But, Peter is still looking for a quota.
He wants a boundary line.
Exactly. It's like Peter is asking for the exact terms and conditions of a spiritual contract. He wants the end-user license agreement for grace.
Right, where on page 12 it explicitly says, upon the 8th offense, you may now legally exact revenge.
Yes. He is asking for the exact geographical coordinate where he is legally and spiritually permitted to stop loving and stop forgiving and start retaliating.
He wants to know when he can finally close the book on grace and open the book of judgment.
And if we are honest, we all do this.
Oh, 100%.
We all want to know, at what point am I justified in cutting this person off? We want a metric so we can feel righteous about our anger.
We want a map. We want to say, the grace stops right here at the fence line. Do not cross. But Jesus completely refuses to sign that contract. He just shatters Peter's math entirely.
He really does.
Jesus replies, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Or some translations put it at 77 times.
Right.
But I have to stop and ask, why use a number like that? Why does Jesus immediately push the standard to a number that is practically impossible to track?
That's a great question.
I mean, is he just giving Peter a bigger math equation? Like, keep a notebook until you hit 490, and then you can unleash your fury.
Not at all. Jesus is intentionally destroying the concept of the ledger altogether. I mean, if you are keeping track up to 490 times, you are entirely missing the point of what forgiveness actually is.
Right, because you're still counting.
Exactly. But there is a brilliant kind of hidden historical echo in that number. If you go all the way back to Genesis chapter 4, there's a man named Lamech.
Okay, the descendant of Cain, right.
Yes, a descendant of Cain. And Lamech boasts to his wives about his violence. He says, if Cain is avenged 7-fold, truly Lamech 77-fold.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Lamech represents the ultimate escalation of human vengeance and bloodlust. It is a boast of infinite retaliation. He's saying, you hurt me once, I will destroy your entire world.
So it's the exact opposite of what Jesus is saying.
Precisely. So when Jesus says 77 times, or 70 times 7, he is directly reversing the curse of Lamech.
That is so powerful.
He is saying, just as the world boasts in infinite escalating revenge, the kingdom of heaven is built on infinite escalating grace. It means we stop counting entirely.
Which, honestly, if we pause to really reflect on that, it is terrifying to our flesh.
It is terrifying.
Because if I have to stop counting, it means I have to give up my right to be the judge. I have to give up my right to exact justice on my own terms.
You have to lay down your weapons.
Yeah. And trying to forgive someone infinitely out of our own emotional reserves, it will leave us completely empty.
Yeah.
We cannot love or forgive like this on our own self-effort.
No, we can't. And that is the pivotal truth we really must anchor ourselves to today.
Yeah.
You cannot produce this kind of forgiveness from your own will. It goes against every survival instinct you possess.
So what do we do?
This is exactly why we must point our eyes toward Christ. We must rely completely on the Savior who never puts a cap on how many times he welcomes us back.
Yeah.
Just think about your own private thoughts, your own repeated failures, the sins you have committed against God again and again and again. How many times has Jesus forgiven you?
Way more than 7.
Right. If he stopped at 7, where would any of us be? The foundation of our ability to forgive others is completely dependent on our understanding of how profoundly we have been forgiven by God.
And to make sure Peter, and honestly, you and I fully grasp this, Jesus immediately launches into a story.
A very dramatic story.
Very. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him.
And right away, a debtor is brought in.
Right away.
Yeah.
And this guy owes the king a truly staggering amount. The text says he owed 10,000 talents.
10,000.
Now, our modern Bibles often translate this as millions of dollars just to give us a sense of scale. But let's actually break down the mechanism of that ancient economy. What exactly is a talent?
We really have to dwell on the sheer weight of this number because it is the entire axis on which the parable turns. The Greek word is talenton, and it was a unit of weight, usually of silver or gold. A single talent was equivalent to 6,000 denarii.
And the denarius was a day's wage, right?
Exactly. Since a denarius was the standard wage for one day of manual labor, one single talent represented about 20 years of daily wages for an average worker.
Let that sink in. 1 talent equals 2 decades of hard labor.
And this servant owes 10,000 of them.
Okay, hold on. Let's just do that math really quickly. 10,000 multiplied by 20 years. That is 200,000 years of labor.
It's an astronomical number.
It's absurd. If I'm sitting in the crowd listening to Jesus say that, I'm rolling my eyes. Like, it breaks the realism of the story. I mean, how does a servant even accrue that kind of debt? Did he put too many chariots on the royal credit card?
Right. It sounds cartoonish, but that is precisely Jesus's point. He wants the audience's jaws to drop.
He wants them to realize how ridiculous it is.
Yes. To give you some historical context, during this time period, the total annual tax revenue gathered from the entire regions of Galilee and Perea, which was ruled by Herod Antipas, was only about 200 talents.
Wait, really? The whole region?
The whole region.
Oh.
And this one man owes 50 times the gross domestic product of his entire region.
So how does a servant get that kind of debt?
Well, he's likely a high-ranking satrap or a regional governor or a chief tax farmer. Rome and its client kings operated on this system of tax farming where officials would bid for the right to collect taxes for a whole province.
Oh, so
Yeah.
he had access to the king's treasury.
Exactly. This man was entrusted with vast sums, and he completely mismanaged it, embezzled it, or just lost it. In terms of physical weight, 10,000 talents of silver is about 375 tons.
375 tons of silver.
It would take an army of wagons just to move it.
So it's basically the ancient equivalent of saying someone owes the bank $3 trillion. It's fundamentally unpayable.
Completely unpayable.
And because he couldn't pay, the master orders the standard legal consequence of the day, which is that the servant be sold, along with his wife, his children, and everything he owned, to pay the debt.
It's the absolute destruction of his life and his family. Under Roman and ancient Jewish law, debt slavery was a very brutal reality.
But look at the servant's response to this impending doom. He falls down before his master and begs, "Please be patient with me, and I will pay it all."
Which is tragically comical.
It really is.
It is pure delusion. He is a man who owes 200,000 years worth of wages, and he looks the king in the eye and essentially says, just give me a little more time. Let me pick up a few extra shifts on the weekend.
I'll cut back on buying coffee, I promise. I'll get it all paid back.
Yes, he doesn't even realize the depth of his own poverty. He still thinks he can manage it. He is trying to negotiate with an impossible reality.
You know, that is such a piercing reflection of the human heart. It represents our deeply ingrained human tendency to tell God, just give me more time, I'll be good enough.
I'll earn it.
Exactly. I'll read my Bible more. I'll serve more at church. I'll stop yelling at my kids. I will earn my salvation. I will pay off my debt of sin if you just give me a chance to prove myself.
We are so incredibly blind to the 375 tons of spiritual debt we carry.
We really are. We think our sin is manageable. We think it's just a minor character flaw or like a small overdraft fee, when in reality it is a catastrophic, unpayable debt against a perfectly holy God.
It is the delusion of self-effort. We want to be our own saviors because we want to maintain our pride. We want to be able to say we pulled ourselves out of the hole.
But we can't.
No. But look at the master's reaction in the story. The king knows the man is delusional. The king knows the debt cannot possibly be repaid. The math is impossible.
Right.
But the text says, then his master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave his debt.
Filled with pity.
Yes. The Greek word used there for pity is splanchnizomai. It is a visceral, gut-wrenching compassion. It literally means to be moved in one's bowels or deep internal organs.
So it's not just a polite, detached sympathy.
Not at all. The king is moved to the very core of his being by the man's desperation.
And I want to highlight the stark contrast here between what was asked and what was given, because the servant just asked for time.
Right, an extension.
Yeah, he asked for an extension on his burden. He was perfectly willing to spend the rest of his life and his children's lives trying to chip away at a $3 trillion mountain.
But the master gave him total freedom.
Total freedom. He didn't just delay the judgment. He didn't offer a reduced interest rate or a payment plan. He completely obliterated the ledger. The debt is gone. The 375 tons of silver, canceled.
But we really must recognize the mechanics of forgiveness here, because this is where the theology gets so profound. When a financial debt is forgiven, the money doesn't just vanish into thin air.
Someone has to take the hit.
Exactly. Someone has to absorb the cost. If you owe me $10,000 and I forgive the debt, I am choosing to make myself $10,000 poorer.
Wow. Yeah.
By forgiving the 10,000 talents, the king is choosing to take the monumental, catastrophic loss upon himself. He absorbs the cost so the servant can go free.
That is incredible.
And this is the exact beautiful picture of what Jesus Christ, our Master and King, did for us. On the cross, Jesus absorbed a debt of sin we could not pay in a million lifetimes.
He took it all on himself.
He took the agonizing cost of our rebellion, our pride, our selfishness, our secret sins upon his own shoulders. He paid the debt with his own life.
The ledger against us wasn't just ignored. It was nailed to the cross and paid in full.
Paid in full.
And when you truly encounter that kind of grace, it is supposed to wreck you. It's supposed to melt your heart, shatter your pride, and transform you from the inside out.
You would think so.
Right. We would expect a man who just had millions of dollars forgiven, a man whose wife and children were just spared from a lifetime of slavery, to walk out of that throne room radiating joy, weeping with gratitude, overflowing with grace toward every single person he meets.
But instead, the story takes a jarring, heartbreaking turn.
It really does.
It exposes the absolute darkness of an unchanged heart. It is a terrifying turn, honestly. The text says, "But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s."
Okay, let's pause and look at the Greek again for that amount.
Sure.
The debt is 100 denarii.
Right.
A denarius, as we established, was a day's wage for a laborer or a Roman soldier. So this is exactly 100 days worth of work. It's roughly a third of a year's salary.
Which is so important to acknowledge because Jesus is being very realistic here.
He's not minimizing it.
No. When we're talking about forgiveness, we are not saying the offense committed against you is nothing. Jesus doesn't have the second servant owe 2 pennies. A third of a year's salary is a real debt.
It's significant.
It might equate to $15,000 or $20,000 in today's terms. It is not insignificant. And to you, the listener, the pain someone caused you is not insignificant.
No, it's not. The emotional pain, the betrayal, the slander, the abuse, the stolen years, it is real. It hurts deeply. It disrupts your life. But look at how this newly forgiven man reacts to a valid but comparatively tiny debt. He doesn't just ask for the money. The text says he grabbed him by the throat.
He grabbed him by the throat. The Greek verb used there is mnigo, which literally means to choke or strangle.
It's violent.
It is a sudden, violent physical assault. He is squeezing the life out of his fellow servant, demanding instant payment. It is a visceral reaction of pure rage and entitlement.
And the fellow servant falls down and begs. And listen to the words he uses. He says, "Be patient with me and I will pay it."
It is the exact same phrase.
The exact same phrase the first servant used just moments prior before the king.
The echo is undeniable. It is a psychological mirror. Hearing those exact words should have immediately triggered a memory of grace in the first servant's mind.
It should have stopped him in his tracks.
She should have looked at this man on his knees, heard the desperate plea for patience, and seen a mirror image of himself before the king. It should have stopped him cold.
But it doesn't.
No. His heart is entirely hardened. The text says, "But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full."
How does that even happen? How does someone go from being crushed by the weight of massive grace, spared from a lifetime of slavery, to grabbing a brother by the throat and throwing him in prison in the exact same afternoon?
It's baffling.
Is it really possible to receive God's forgiveness, to sit in church, to sing the songs about grace, and yet have it not soften your heart at all?
Sadly, yes.
Looking through, biblical commentaries and psychological studies on this, you see a really interesting term used to describe this: spiritual amnesia.
Spiritual amnesia.
Let's unpack why that actually happens in the human heart.
Well, it happens because of a phenomenon known in psychology as the fundamental attribution error, but it's wrapped in deep spiritual blindness.
Okay, what is the fundamental attribution error?
It basically says that when I make a mistake, it's because of my circumstances. I was stressed, I was tired, I need grace.
Right, I had a bad day.
Exactly. But when you make a mistake, it's because of your character. You are malicious, you are lazy, you need punishment.
Oh, wow.
So this man experienced the benefit of grace, but he never allowed the reality of grace to penetrate his character. He remained fundamentally a man of the ledger.
He still loved the leather.
He is perfectly happy to accept a cancellation of his own massive debt because it benefited his survival, but he immediately weaponized the law against his brother.
It is absolute blinding hypocrisy.
It is. He wants grace for himself, but strict, unrelenting justice for everyone else.
Because he forgot the cross. Or in the context of the parable, he forgot the king's mercy. And when we lose sight of what Jesus saved us from, when we forget the 375 tons of sin that we were forgiven,
We become harsh.
we do. We become demanding, cynical, and cruel to those around us. We start keeping score again. We grab people by the throat, maybe not physically, but emotionally.
Right. We choke them with our words.
With our silent treatments, with our passive-aggressive behavior, with our refusal to reconcile, with our subtle ways of making sure they know they are in our debt. We demand that they pay us what they owe, extracting a pound of flesh through their guilt.
That is a profound insight into human nature. Because forgiving others isn't about minimizing their offense against you. It is never about saying, what you did was okay, it didn't hurt.
Right. Forgiveness doesn't mean saying it was fine.
Exactly. It's about magnifying God's mercy toward you. The only way you can release the 100 denarii debt is by keeping your eyes relentlessly fixed on the 10,000 talent debt you were forgiven.
That's the only way.
The moment you take your eyes off your own forgiven state, the 100 denarii becomes the biggest thing in your world. It eclipses the sun, and you will choke your brother to get it back because you have forgotten the economy of the kingdom.
But the kingdom of heaven does not operate in a vacuum. God is not blind to how we treat the people he shed his blood to save.
No, he is watching closely.
And the story drives toward a very solemn, inescapable conclusion. The other servants see this violent hypocrisy. They see a man who has just forgiven a cosmic debt, choking a man over pocket change, and they are deeply upset.
As they should be.
Right. So they go to the king and report exactly what happened. The righteous reckoning has arrived.
It has. The king summons the man back. But this time, the tone is entirely different. He calls him an evil servant.
Wow.
Notice he didn't call him evil when he owed the massive financial debt. He calls him evil when he refuses to show mercy.
That's so telling.
The king says, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you?
He's pointing out the broken logic of his heart.
Exactly. The king is showing him that grace is meant to be a conduit, not a cul-de-sac. It is meant to flow into you and out of you to others.
It shouldn't just stop with you.
Right. To dam up the flow of grace, to hoard it for yourself while demanding justice from others, is to fundamentally reject the reality of God's kingdom.
And then comes the consequence. Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. And Jesus, looking at Peter and the disciples, delivers this chilling bottom line. That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart.
It's a very intense ending.
It is. And I have to be honest, I need to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who is feeling genuine fear right now, because this ending is terrifying.
It is sobering, yes.
Tortured until he pays it all, and we already established at the very beginning that he can't pay it all. 200,000 years of labor. He will be in there forever.
True.
If the whole point of this story is that God's grace is infinite, why does the story end with God basically turning into a mob boss, throwing a guy in the torture chamber? As a listener hearing this, I'm experiencing some major theological whiplash right now. How do we reconcile this violently angry king with the loving, gentle Jesus who heals and redeems? Help me make sense of this.
I completely understand the whiplash. It is a deeply sobering passage, and we must handle it with both pastoral care and absolute biblical truth.
Okay.
First, we have to understand the historical mechanism of Roman debtors' prisons. The word used for torturers in the Greek is bassinistes.
Bassinistes?
Yes. In ancient times, debtors weren't just put in a cell to serve time. They were handed over to inquisitors whose job was to inflict pain in order to force the debtor's family and friends on the outside to liquidate their assets, sell their land, and pay the debt to stop the torture.
That's horrific.
It was a brutal system of extracting payment. Jesus is using the harshest cultural reality of his day to illustrate a spiritual truth.
So if we map that onto God, what is Jesus actually saying? Because surely God doesn't have literal inquisitors pulling out fingernails in the celestial dungeon.
Exactly. We have to look at the nature of God's anger here. God's anger in this parable is a righteous, holy defense of grace.
The defense of grace.
He is fiercely protective of mercy. He loves his children so much that he will not tolerate a kingdom where grace is hoarded and weaponized to abuse others.
That makes sense.
To refuse to forgive is to reject the very currency of his kingdom. If you insist on living by the ledger, if you insist on a world where every debt must be paid in full with no mercy, God will eventually hand you over to the rules of the world you have chosen.
Wow.
And by the standard of the strict ledger, none of us can survive. The Apostle Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 1. The wrath of God is often simply God handing us over to our own destructive choices.
So the torture is actually the prison of unforgiveness itself.
Precisely. The torture chamber is not a place God gleefully throws you into. It is a cell you lock yourself inside from the inside out.
We do it to ourselves.
We do.
Yeah.
When we adamantly refuse to forgive, when we clench our fists and hold on to our bitterness, we are handed over to the basinists, the internal torturers of our own minds. Unforgiveness is an acid that destroys the container in which it is stored. Ask anyone who has carried a bitter grudge for decades. It rots the bones, it torments the mind, it breeds anxiety, suspicion, paranoia, and deep spiritual death.
It really does. You can see it in people.
It is the torture of constantly trying to extract a payment, an apology, a confession, a sign of suffering from the person who hurt you, but the payment never comes, or it's never enough.
So you're just stuck.
You cannot sleep. You cannot find peace. You are chained to the person you hate. It is a self-inflicted spiritual torture. God is warning us with the utmost urgency. If you do not release them, you will lock yourself in a prison of your own making, and the torment will be unbearable.
And Jesus specifies that we must forgive from your heart. It's not just a superficial verbal "I forgive you" while secretly hoping their life falls apart.
Right, it's not a performance.
It's not a passive-aggressive, "I'm over it, but I'll never speak to you again." The Greek implies a complete letting go from the deepest part of your being.
Forgiving from the heart means a deep, true relinquishment. It means you surrender the right to retaliate. You take the ledger with all its meticulously recorded wrongs, every date, every specific word they said to cut you down, and you hand it over to the righteous judge.
You give it to God.
You say, "Lord, this hurt me deeply, it was wrong, but I trust you to handle the justice. I am tearing up the invoice."
Tearing it up.
And this is not something you can manufacture by gritting your teeth. It is a Christ-empowered release, made possible only by the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, softening your heart and constantly redirecting your days back to the cross.
I want to speak directly to you, the one listening right now, who is thinking of a specific name, a specific face, a specific betrayal. You know exactly who owes you that 100 denarii.
You know exactly who it is.
Maybe it's a parent who abandoned you. Maybe it's a spouse who broke a vow. Maybe it's a friend who slandered your name and ruined your reputation. And the thought of forgiving them feels like trying to lift 375 tons of solid silver all by yourself.
It feels impossible.
It feels deeply unfair. And you are exhausted from carrying the weight of the grudge. I want to encourage you. You do not have to muster up the strength to forgive from your own empty reserves. You don't have to fake it. God sees the depth of the wound they caused. He is not dismissing your pain. He is not saying what they did was okay.
He sees every single tear. And he knows the exact agonizing cost of what was taken from you. But he loves you too much to leave you in the torture chamber of bitterness.
He wants you free.
He is inviting you out of the prison. But the path out of that cell does not start by looking at the person who hurt you. It doesn't start by waiting for them to finally understand what they did.
So where does it start?
It starts by looking back to the cross. Look first at Jesus, the ultimate king who absorbed your unimaginable debt. Dwell on his mercy. Meditate on the 10,000 talents he canceled for you when you were completely undeserving, when you had nothing to offer but your own brokenness.
Just rest in that grace.
Let his incomprehensible, visceral love fill your heart, heal your wounds, and satisfy your need for justice. When you let his grace wash over you, it eventually, inevitably spills over onto the debts of others. You forgive because you have been infinitely forgiven.
That is the beautiful, liberating, chain-breaking truth of the gospel. It completely rewrites the story of our pain. And as we leave you today, I want to offer a gentle, but perhaps entirely transformative question for you to ponder in your own quiet prayer time.
I love this thought.
It's a thought that challenges the very foundation of our ledgers. What if the person you are struggling so deeply to forgive right now? What if the pain they caused you is actually God's invitation for you to experience the depths of his own forgiveness for you in a completely new, life-altering way?
Amen to that.
What if tearing up their invoice is the only way you will finally understand the absolute freedom of having your own torn up?